The Miami Hurricanes may have just put themselves in pole position to land one of the top running backs in the entire country, but there is still some uncertainty about a certain five-star prospect who just visited the U over the weekend.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing, and I hope everyone had an awesome Father's Day, by the way. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals, and thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode of Locked On Canes, I will predict all of Miami's stat leaders for the upcoming 2025 season. We'll talk, there's a lot to talk about with recruiting. The battle for Calvin Russell. Where does Miami stand coming off of his official visit weekend? Local five-star receiver out of Miami Northwestern. He made some comments after his visit that I think if you take them on face value, they were very positive about Miami, but a lot of Miami fans were reading negativity into it. We'll talk about that. But folks, there's definitely a handful of players in Miami's latest round of official visits. They just finished those up on Sunday that the Hurricanes are trending up for. We certainly hope Calvin Russell is one of those. But before we talk about Russell, seems like the player that Miami made the biggest move with is four-star running back Jae Lamar out of Colquitt County, Georgia. It doesn't hurt that Lamar is a former high school teammate of Nye Carr, wide receiver who's on Miami's roster, and a former high school teammate of Kamal Bonner, linebacker who just signed with the U. And he and Kamal, I think, are especially close. The two of them, plus Malachi Toney, hosted Jae Lamar on his visit, and seems like everything Miami left a positive impression on Lamar. And, despite the fact that Miami's running back recruiting has been really busy, like they've got Javion Mallory committed, although he just made an official visit to Alabama. So he's still a Miami commit, so we hope we hold on to Javion Mallory. Miami is trying to land Derek Cooper, who I think they will take no matter how many other running backs they have committed. But Jae Lamar is also an absolute priority, and I believe Miami made him feel that way. And folks, this is one of the most talented running backs in the nation. He's the number 8 running back in the entire class, according to the 24/7 composite. And, for that reason, I know like some folks have been in our inbox in the last few days have said, hey, like, is Jae Lamar like a plan B, in case we lose Javion Mallory? Honestly, to even refer to Jae Lamar as a plan B, I think is an insult to how good he is. Like when you're talking about the 8th rated running back in the class, he would be option number 1 for the vast majority of Power 4 programs. Like you're talking about a phenomenal player. And in case you haven't noticed, Miami likes to run the ball. Mario Cristobal likes to run the ball. Miami likes to have deep backfield. So I don't think Miami looks at it like, hey, we've got a number 1 back in this class, number 2, number 3. Like Miami is looking to land the top running backs in the country, including Jae Lamar, including Javion Mallory, who you want to hold on to, and including Derek Cooper, who you would like to land. And we'll see if a decision comes soon. But more on Mallory. And again, I cannot emphasize how good this player is. 5'11", 190 pounds, and he's got a decision coming up. We're only going to have to wait another 9 days for Lamar, who's going to be announcing on June 25th. Clemson's been in the mix for him. Another team that's been in the mix is his home state team, the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, some interesting potential intel on that. And I know my guy, Gabby Urruti at Inside the U, has been talking about this over the last day or so. There's some doubt. We'll see. I got about 5 days left till he's due there. There is maybe some doubt if Lamar even makes the scheduled visit to Georgia. If he were to cancel that, you could obviously take that as a really good sign. But either way, he's planning to announce on the 25th. Does he squeeze in a UGA visit right before that? Or does Miami end up being the final official visit for Jae Lamar? We're going to find out. And, again, this is not an option B or even an option 1A. This is a fantastic player, regardless of what happens with Javion Mallory, who we hope Miami holds on to. And regardless of what happens with Derek Cooper, who, by the way, that's another Miami versus Georgia battle. Miami's got a ton of battles with Georgia. You obviously beat them out for Jackson Cantwell. You're battling Brett Colajay is one Miami is fighting with the Georgia Bulldogs for. Lamar, another one. Ton of battles with UGA, some battles with LSU as well that we're going to talk about. But sounds like really Miami made a move with Lamar. And Lamar, he's got a close relationship, not only with his former high school teammates that we talked about, but Matt Merritt, Miami's running backs coach. He and Lamar have become really tight. And one of the things that Lamar said after his OV to Miami, which I thought really kind of says a lot about Matt Merritt's personality, the kind of man he is, and the type of recruiting organization that Mario Cristobal likes to run. They really emphasize honesty. And this is a pretty powerful quote, I thought, from Jae Lamar after his visit, who said about Matt Merritt, Miami's running backs coach, very upfront dude. Ever since I've known him, he's been telling me the same things. And that's much respect because you have other coaches that are lying about a lot of things that are trying to sell their program to get you there. But Coach Merritt, he kept it 100 ever since, and I appreciate him for that. So a lot of times when when other coaches, and we've seen it before in past Miami coaches, not to mention any names, but when you put on the whole used car salesman thing, sometimes these high school players are smarter than you give them credit for, and they can see through your nonsense. These young men are a lot more perceptive than certain coaches give them credit for. And yes, they appreciate when Mario Cristobal and his staff are honest with them in their recruiting pitches. And that's something that Lamar definitely appreciates about Matt Merritt. This is one that I've really been paying close attention to, another prospect in recent weeks. And that's he's a Tennessee Volunteers commit. But maybe, just maybe, Miami is making that commitment a little bit shaky. We're talking about wide receiver Tyran Evans. There seems to be some momentum here about Miami being a possible flip destination for him. And folks, if you're not familiar with Tyran Evans, or if you think because I guess he's a composite 3-star that this is not a very good player, like I think this is a very underrated player. And when you actually dig deep on the evals and you watch some of the film, you hear what coaches are saying about him. Tyran Evans is someone, the opportunity to possibly flip this player from Tennessee. This is really exciting to me. And he also has those dimensions that you really want, about, a little under 200 pounds. He's listed at 6'3", but my understanding is that he's actually closer to 6'5" in reality. So this is one of those rare times where I don't know if the recruiting services are like a year behind on the height and weight for him, or if he hit a recent growth spurt, but apparently he looked every bit as tall over the weekend with Calvin Russell, who is around 6'5", and that Tyran Evans didn't look any shorter or any smaller than Russell did. So this is one of the usually guys will get overlisted, not underlisted. This is a case where Tyran Evans might even be bigger than they give him credit for. And again, this Miami seems to be in good position to possibly flip him from Tennessee. He said to Kane's Insight after his visit about the way Miami sees him in their offense, quote, "They want me to be a make a play type of guy, whether that's on a deep route or a comeback. They were just saying, like, just by my size, everybody's going to be scared. They'd be scared of me going deep, so the short routes would always be there," he said. So that's a good one. Another player who visited over the weekend, who we feel very good about, that has been trending towards Miami, another pass catcher, is tight end Izzy Briggs, about 6'4", 200 pounds, maybe growing. I think they expect him to be more of the closer to the prototypical tight end size by the time he gets to college. Super versatile player who's lined up in high school at quarterback, tight end, receiver, running back. He's lined up at several positions on defense. Izzy Briggs has been a top tight end target for Miami. He's still planning on checking out Michigan and Tennessee before he makes his decision, but Miami seems to be in really good position there. So let's talk about, when we come back, Calvin Russell. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on Locked On Canes. Guys, the only ticket app that I use is Game Time. I have gotten tickets to Florida Panthers playoff games. We'll talk about that in a second, as they're one win away from clinching a second straight Stanley Cup. I have gone to concerts. I saw an AC/DC show last month where I got great prices on Game Time. Folks, you are always getting the best prices, the best features, and the prices go down on the Game Time app the closer you get to the first pitch, to the kickoff, whatever. And there's nothing like the NBA Finals, guys. It's the one-of-a-kind atmosphere. You must experience it live. We're already delivering with this year's matchup. Stanley Cup, same thing. And if you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games, because prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to tip-off with killer last-minute deals, panoramic views from your seat in the app before you buy, and no surprise fees. Game Time is a total game changer. Folks, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. And I'm looking right now, guys. Game 6, Florida Panthers, Edmonton Oilers, starting at $909 on Game Time. I have seen other sites with prices well over $1,000 on Game Time, $909 if you want to check out Game 6 and Sunrise. I'm telling you, folks, Game Time is the absolute spot. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account and redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I will have a new episode tomorrow, talking all the big recruiting news, realignment rumors, football previews for the Atlantic Coast Conference. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts, and we're available free on YouTube. All right, so, we got some positive words, and I know our guy, Gabby Urrutia at InsideTheU.com wrote that, Miami definitely improved their position with Calvin Russell. But what we still have to wonder is, because probably prior to Russell's visit to Miami, and this is one, there's been a lot of moving parts here, and a truly national recruitment, right? Michigan's been in it for him at times. Oregon, like from coast to coast, not just a regional Miami versus Florida State type of thing. But Calvin Russell has been linked to schools all over the country, including Syracuse. Now, Syracuse seems like things have died down quite a bit there in recent weeks, which, about a month ago, you would have said, hey, that's really good for Miami, because maybe it felt like Miami versus Syracuse. But LSU has been very much in the mix for Calvin Russell as of late, to the point where some folks think that they might be the favorite, at least heading into Russell's Miami visit. Coming out of it, did Miami gain enough ground? We'll talk about the things Russell said after his visit in a moment. And, I've talked about it ad nauseum here on Locked On Canes. This is a player I've been banging the drum for, right? I mean, Derek Cooper is another one. Like, we hope we land Coop, Chaminade Madonna, 5-star running back. The same way we felt so strongly a few cycles ago about Ruben Bain. There are certain local players, ambassadors in the community that you want to keep home, right? So happy to land Bain for that reason. So disappointed to lose out on Jeremiah Smith to Ohio State for that reason. You want to keep guys like Derek Cooper and Calvin Russell home. And, the other component of Calvin Russell's recruitment, and he spent time in his official visit this weekend. It wasn't only a Miami football visit. He and his family spent time with Jay Lucas, head coach of the basketball team. So it was like a 2-for-1 OV situation for Russell over the weekend. And this is a player that can help you both in football and in basketball. Now, let me read you some of the comments that Russell made to Inside the U and other outlets after his visit. And it's interesting because Miami fans read a lot into these comments. So Calvin Russell said, quote, "It was a nice visit. I got to know Miami a little better, have fun a little bit, had a decent amount of fun, a decent amount of information. It was a good visit." He said, "This is home. In reality, this is home. This is where I got to be," he said. He continues. He says, "I really just got to see the versatile parts of this program. It's fun and business at the same time," Russell said. "We ain't really had that much meetings, but we had fun," he said. One interesting caveat to staying home they write, Miami's basketball program has opened the door for Russell to play for them as well. Russell has expressed interest in participating in both football and basketball at the next level. He met with Jay Lucas while on his visit. He says, it's important to my decision. I talked with Coach Lucas. We had to talk to him, my mom and my dad. We're over to basketball. Everything goes hand in hand, he said. With a lot of schools invested in acquiring Russell, he's just taking it one step at a time. Quote, I'm just enjoying my process. When I get done with my official visits, I'll think about it more. He said, I definitely feel better about Miami, the program, and everything about it. All right. So if you're watching and listening to this episode of Locked On Canes, chances are you may have read these comments already because, you guys are the hardcorest of the hardcore. But if you're hearing those comments for the first time, let me know in the comments below. You heard what Donno just read to you. Comments from Calvin Russell. Do you take that as him saying he's genuinely interested in staying at Miami and being a hometown hero? Or do you think he's kind of just, glazing over it, not being over complimentary, maybe looking for reasons to leave? So a lot of Miami fans take it the second way, the not so good way. And I'm a little perplexed by it. Like, I don't know if you expected Russell to come out and say, amazing, incredible. They knocked it out of the park. This is where I have to be. I mean, he kind of said that. This is where I got to be. Like, he literally did say that. But I guess like the lukewarm part of his comments that worry Miami fans a little bit is it was a nice visit. I got to know Miami a little better, have fun a little bit, had a decent amount of fun, a decent amount of information. It was a good visit. Like, that part of the quote kind of makes you feel, maybe he's not loving us all that much. Oh, man. And remember, Calvin Russell, another one, his decision's coming up in about 2.5 weeks. July 5th, his birthday, he's going to be deciding, and it may come down to an LSU versus Miami battle with him. Now, it's important to note, everyone that I talk to about Russell says the same thing. No matter who he picks on July 5th, not over. It's not to say who he picks on July 5th won't ultimately get his signature there, but, the battle is going to rage on for him. Like, I don't expect he's going to fully shut it down. Like, to Jackson Cantwell's credit, like 5-star, top Miami commit right now, he's shut his recruitment down at this moment in time. He's completely locked in with Miami. For Calvin Russell, that's probably going to wage on, up until National Signing Day in December. But, honestly, like I read those comments and I say, it sounds to me like Russell's keeping it pretty close to the vest. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk for Miami, but I do find it interesting that people hear and read those comments. And some of you are like, it's over. Guy doesn't want to be here. This is terrible. I think it's going to come down to Miami versus LSU. And then, of course, another top receiver that Miami is in it for is Tristan Keys, who is currently committed to LSU. So how would Calvin Russell decision affect Tristan Keys, I wonder? Perhaps, there's certainly a scenario where they both wind up at LSU. Maybe there's a scenario where they both wind up at Miami, if I could be so greedy. Miami would like them both. LSU would like them both. But I also wonder if LSU is going all in with Calvin Russell, is there any kind of concern there about where they stand with Tristan Keys? We talked recently here on Locked On Canes about how it certainly doesn't hurt Miami's cause that Keys recently signed a big NIL deal with Adidas. And Miami being an Adidas school, he can get more opportunities with his Adidas NIL deal because of that. Same can be said for Texas A&M, by the way, so watch out for them. But Russell just had a visit to Tennessee. Don't rule the Vols out either, because he's very close with Faison Brandon, top quarterback in the class, who's committed to Tennessee. So you have to kind of wonder if that's the direction he wants to go in. Things are very much up in the air for him. And again, I know Keys is technically an LSU verbal commit, but it's like he's a commit in name only. You could say LSU has been the leader for that reason, but whether it be Tennessee, Miami, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, been a ton of programs trying to flip Tristan Keys. I just hope Miami can land one of them. I really do. And yeah, there are other top receivers Miami can land, but if you can get one of Tristan Keys or Calvin Russell, you're going to be in really good shape, I think, moving forward. Speaking of LSU and Miami being involved for some of the same players. Another one of those is five-star defensive lineman Lamar Brown. Now, Lamar Brown literally goes to a high school university lab in Louisiana that is attached to LSU's campus. The campuses are one and the same. And yet, Lamar Brown shocked a lot of folks in hometown Baton Rouge yesterday. He canceled his upcoming visit to LSU, which would strongly indicate they are out of it. Does that mean Miami is the spot? Maybe. Don't rule out Texas A&M, though. Another Aggies connection here. Lamar Brown just took a really good visit to Texas A&M this past weekend, and then a day or so after that, he cancels the upcoming LSU visit. Perhaps it ends up being a Miami versus Texas A&M, really high stakes bidding war type of situation. At least that's the way the media would certainly cover it. But watch out for Lamar Brown, because again, we like Tyson Bacon, who just committed to Miami last week, but you still want to grab as many top defensive tackles as possible. And Lamar Brown is arguably the best of the entire bunch. So, keep an eye on him since he canceled his visit to LSU. All right, when we come back, I want to answer questions from you guys in the Locked On Canes Insiders chat, including we got a question about Miami's new strength and conditioning coach, because, yeah, the Hurricanes made the move at the end of the week. We know who Aaron Feld's replacement is going to be. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Thank you for making us your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out the portal. Our very good friend Brian Smith, who's going to join us later this week, he does an awesome job covering all things transfer portal, NIL, recruiting on a podcast called The Portal right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And the reason why, there's a lot of reasons why I want to have Brian on again this week. He's one of our better guests, I think, but he got Miami fans going on social media because around Friday or Saturday, he made a bold prediction on his X account that Florida is going to go into Hard Rock Stadium September week 4 and beat Miami. That got the Miami fans talking. So I want to have Brian on to explain his take on why, Miami, of course, went into the swamp last year and beat the Gators 41-17, why he thinks Florida is going to come into Miami and get it done this coming season. We got a question from Bob in Louisville, who says, hey, Donno, how will the change of strength and conditioning coach affect offseason strength building? All right, so yeah, it was around a week and a half ago. Former head strength and conditioning coach Aaron Feld, you know him from the handlebar mustache, and we love him. He stepped down. He wants to spend more time with his family, be a better husband, be a better father. So he's stepping away. And we've talked about how important the strength and conditioning coach job is, especially this time of year, because until training camp starts at the end of July, like for the next month and a half, the coach who has the most contact with players and the most hands-on role with football players is the strength and conditioning coach, because the regular head coach and position coaches aren't allowed to do one-on-one stuff with the players this time of year. And Miami's got their guy, and I will tentatively say I think this is a really good move. Right? Well, I mean, we'll find out to see how the body types transform over the next couple of years. But Miami goes with Irvin Young. If that name is familiar to you, it should be. Because Irvin Young was previously on Miami's strength and conditioning staff in 2022 and 2023. So one thing that I like very much is continuity. This is a guy who already has worked with Mario Cristobal, and the relationship between the head coach and strength and conditioning coach is really important, because you've got to be able to build the body types that the head coach wants. So the fact that they've worked together before, and he worked under Aaron Feld's program for a couple of years, there's a certain amount of continuity that goes into that, right? I like the resume of Irvin Young. I mean, this is someone who, yeah, he's had a previous spell at Miami. He most recently worked in Tennessee as I think like second in command for their strength program in Tennessee. Prior to that, he's worked with Missouri and he worked with Vanderbilt several years ago. He also worked with Kansas. But, you talk about Missouri, Tennessee, already working under Miami, a guy who's got a lot of SEC experience. We all know Mario Cristobal, rightfully so, likes to have SEC body types, right? Bigger, stronger, faster players are going to beat smaller, slower players. That's just, that's the law of nature out there, and it's the law of the football field as well. So it seems like Irvin Young, not only having continuity, having worked on this staff before, but also having so much SEC experience outside of Miami, is, going to have the ability, the understanding, and the experience to, help mold these young men and their, strength programs into creating SEC type of athletes, which is what Mario Cristobal wants. So, I mean, there's, again, there's a lot to like about this hire, and I hope to be able to get to know Coach Young in the coming years. Hopefully he's as fun to cover as Aaron Feld was, and I imagine with his experience, he's worked for Feld before, so it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I mean, thank you, Bob in Louisville, for the question, because this is an incredibly important position to fill. Let's see. Oh, well, we talked about this last week. Joey Kane says, how is Wisconsin feeling after getting caught making illegal recruiting calls? That is amazing news to read. Another victory for the bad guys. Yeah, so Luke Fickell did all of that whining and moaning about Miami getting Xavier Lucas to transfer to the U. Even though, again, we had Lucas's lawyer on several months ago, he explained how careful Miami was to not tamper and how he guided and helped guide Xavier Lucas to seamlessly make the move to Miami without entering the transfer portal and doing everything properly. Even the NCAA admitted they didn't break any rules. Miami didn't break any rules. Lucas didn't break any rules. Wisconsin was complaining about that, accusing Miami of tampering. And then the irony, after all of that whining, stop whining, they're the ones who, and this had nothing to do with the Lucas case, but Tennessee, or not Tennessee, I have Tennessee on the brain, Wisconsin gets put on a year's probation for making illegal phone calls. I thought the person who made the best point of that, about that, was Brian Smith from the portal, who said, you're telling me Wisconsin, they were cheating. They were making improper contact to recruits, and yet still their recruiting classes have sucked in the Luke Fickell era. So if you're going to cheat a little bit better than that, eh? Man. But yeah, it was ironic and it was funny. Oh man, which running back do you think will have the most impactful season? Gilbert says. Most impactful. I will say this. The guy that people are sleeping on. I'm not saying he's going to be the most impactful, because you could say Fletcher or Lyle, but do not sleep on Shamar Brown, the transfer from North Dakota State, because that dude runs with power and he runs with an angry streak. And, his physicality and his body type was begging for a power 4 move. And North Dakota State is the Lamborghini program at the FCS level. So making that move to the power 4 was right for him. But I think Shamar Brown, even if he is Miami's third back, quote unquote, third back behind Fletcher and Lyle, I think he's going to have more of an impact than people expect. Because anytime I see national media guys talking about Miami's running back duo this year, when they mention Fletcher and Lyle, I always get upset that they leave out Marty Brown, because I think he's going to fit right in. All right, so hold on. I want to tackle this one. Make sure I give this one a little bit of time. Dave wants to know who's going to lead Miami in rushing yards, receiving yards, tackles, sacks, and interceptions. All right, let me go rapid fire on this one. Okay, I got this weird feeling that Jordan Lyle, I think, is going to lead Miami in rushing yards. I think Fletcher is going to lead the team in touchdowns, but with Lyle being the guy who may break off more chunk plays with that speed of his, I could see Lyle leading the team in yards, Fletcher leading the team in touchdowns, and as I mentioned, Shamar Brown being a bigger part of the offense than people expect. But I'm going to go with Jordan Lyle leading the team in rushing yards. In receiving yards, oh man, this is so tough. I'm going to go with my gut and say JoJo Trader. Because again, and we haven't seen some of the new guys Miami added, Keelan Marion, Tony Johnson. There was something about the JoJo Trader was so consistent throughout spring ball. I'm going to go with JoJo leading the team in receiving yards. Leading the team in tackles. Oh man, I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say Mohamed Toure, transfer running back from or transfer linebacker, I should say, from Rutgers. I think he's physically, the dude is a beast, fully recovered, hopefully bounced back from the knee injury. He knows Corey Heatherman's defense. I'm gonna go with Mohamed Toure in tackles. In sacks, I'm gonna say Akeem Mesidor. And I'm going to say it because I think he and Ruben Bain are going to be, back and forth all season. Some days, Bain is leading, Mesidor's leading. I think Ruben Bain, though, is going to be commanding a little bit more attention and double teams from the opposing O-lines. I think he's going to free up a little bit more for Mesidor. So I'm going to go with Mesidor getting 11 sacks and Bain getting 10 and a half, something like that. I'll go with Mesidor leading the team in sacks. And then in interceptions, I'm going to say Zechariah Poyser. I like to lean to the safety position for that for obvious reasons. Poyser had a really good spring. I'm going to say Zechariah Poyser, transfer safety from Jacksonville State. So mark my predictions down, and we will revisit those throughout the season and at the end of the year. And in the meantime, smash that like button and subscribe to Locked On Canes. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.